History of the Pope, Catholic Church. The Bishop of Rome and head of the Catholic Church worldwide, the Pope is sometimes known as the Supreme Pontiff, Roman Pontiff, or Sovereign Pontiff. He has been the ruler of the Papal States, which evolved into the Vatican City state since the 8th century. According to Catholic doctrine, the Bishop of Rome's primacy is largely a result of his role as St. Peter's apostolic successor. When Jesus handed Peter the heavenly keys and the power to bind and loose, he gave Peter the position of authority and designated him as the rock upon which the church would be built. On March 13, 2013, Francis was selected to become the new pope. Both the authority of the Episcopal See and the role of the Pope is referred to as the Holy See. The Vatican City-State is a city-state that occupies a small portion of the Rome metropolitan area. To guarantee its temporal and spiritual independence, it was established by the Lateran Treaty between Italy and the Holy See in 1929. The Holy See, whose offices are in the clearly autonomous Vatican City-State, is recognized as a sovereign authority under international law. In addition to having diplomatic relations and political agreements with various independent governments, the Holy See is recognized for its membership in several international organizations. The Apostolic See of Rome was founded in the 1st century, according to Catholic tradition, by the apostles St. Peter and St. Paul. The Papacy, one of the oldest institutions in existence, has had a profound impact on human history. The popes intervened to arbitrate several doctrinal disputes and helped advance Christianity and antiquity. They commonly acted as middlemen between Christian kings and Western Europe during the Middle Ages, fulfilling a role with significant secular implications. Along with expanding Christian doctrine and belief, contemporary popes also promote ecumenism, interfaith dialogue, charitable work, and human rights. The papacy finally rivaled the influence of territorial kings as it grew over time in both the secular and political spheres. The papacy's temporal authority has decreased throughout the centuries, and now it mostly focuses on religious issues. The dogma of papal infallibility, which is used on rare occasions when the Pope speaks cathedra, or literally from the chair, of St. Peter to issue a formal definition of faith or morals, was first established in 1870. In contrast, papal claims of spiritual authority have grown stronger over time. The Pope is regarded as one of the most powerful people in the world because of his position as head of the largest non-government provider of education and healthcare in the world, with a vast network of charities. He also has a significant diplomatic, cultural, and spiritual influence on both the 1.3 billion Catholics who follow him and those who do not. History, title, and etymology. The name Pope comes from the Greek word Pappas, which means father. In the early centuries of Christianity, the title was used, particularly in the East, to refer to all bishops and other senior clergy. Later, during the time of Pope Leo I, it was reserved in the West for the Bishop of Rome. However, the reservation was not made formally until the 11th century. The term pope was first used to refer to Heraclius, the Patriarch of Alexandria, who had already passed at the time. The term pope was first used in English in an Old English translation of Bede's Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum in the middle of the 10th century, referring to the Roman Pope Vitalian of the 7th century, position within the Church. The Catholic Church holds that the bishops who succeeded the apostles as a group or college, with the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, as their lead, now have the pastoral office, the function of shepherding the Church, which was once held by the apostles. Thus, the term Supreme Pontiff, another name for the Pope, is derived. The Catholic Church's theological constitution, Lumen Gentium, clearly distinguishes between apostles and bishops, presenting the latter as the predecessors of the former and the Pope as Peter's successor, and that he is the head of the bishops, just as Peter was the head of the apostles. According to the Catholic Church, Jesus personally chose Peter to be the outward head of the Church. Some historians dispute the claim that Peter was the city's first bishop because the Episcopal See in Rome can be traced back to no earlier than the 3rd century. Irenaeus, a church father who wrote in the year 180 AD, expressed the opinion that Peter established and structured the church in Rome in his works. Additionally, Irenaeus was not the first to describe Peter's participation in the early Roman Church in writing. In a letter to the Corinthians, the Roman Catholic Church described the persecution of Christians there as one of the struggles of our time and introduced the Corinthians to its heroes, the first, the greatest, and the most columns, Peter and Paul, the good apostles. In his epistle to the Romans from the city of Smyrna, St. Ignatius of Antioch, who wrote shortly after Clement, claimed he would not command them as Peter and Paul did. Although some experts assert otherwise, most agree that Peter was crucified in Rome under Nero's rule. They cite this as well as additional proof, including Emperor Constantine building the old St. Peter's Basilica on the location of St. Peter's grave, which was held and given to him by Rome's Christian community. Although there is historical controversy, it is possible that presbyter bishops served as the local church's leaders in the first-century Christian communities. Metropolitan areas gradually saw the establishment of episcopal sees. It's possible that Antioch created such a structure before Rome. Although Irenaeus once more emphasized the legitimacy of one line of bishops from the time of St. Peter up to his contemporary Pope Victor I and enumerated them, there were opposing assertions to the position of legitimate bishop in Rome over time at major turning points. According to some authors, Rome's first bishop did not likely appear until the middle of the 2nd century. They considered Linus, Cletus, and Clement to be significant presbyter bishops, but not necessarily kingly bishops. Even a letter from the bishop or patriarch of Antioch acknowledged the bishop of Rome as a first among equals, though the specifics of what this meant are unclear. Documents from the 1st century and the early 2nd century show that the bishop of Rome had some sort of preeminence and prominence in the church as a whole. Early Christianity. According to scholarly consensus, small congregations were presided over by bishops and presbyters at the turn of the 1st and 2nd centuries, whose responsibilities overlapped or were equivalent to one another. According to certain sources, the terms presbyter and episkopos were initially used synonymously. There was no single monarchical bishop in Rome until the middle of the 2nd century, and perhaps later, according to some. Rome and a few other places in the early Christian era stake claims to the global church's top leadership position. The Jerusalem church, still revered in Orthodox tradition as the Mother Church, was led by James the Just, also known as the Brother of the Lord. Jewish study was centered at Alexandria, which later became a hub for Christian learning. Paul the Apostle wrote his epistle to the Romans to a sizable congregation in Rome at the beginning of the Apostolic era. Legend has it that Paul was crucified there. The Roman capital came to be recognized as a Christian city of remarkable significance during the 1st century of the church. The church there issued a letter to the church in Corinth at the end of the century, apologizing for not taking action sooner in a significant conflict and offering to mediate. A few more historical references from that era speak of the Roman see's authority being recognized outside of Rome.